Okay, so with these individual degree plans, I got to do my research concerns and answer questions. It's a great, great opportunity to do that. And so, yes, you do a lot of work with the literature review and all those other things, but it's well worth it. I got to tell you, once you got in the program and you're here and what is this, the second, third semester? How far are you all that you're getting ready to plan your final project? First semester. Hang in there. You got good stuff coming. You got good stuff coming. So, my concerns, what brought me to this program is because I think I'm a little bit different than other people. I grieve for things that most people don't grieve about. I grieve about people, places, things, loss of community, photos, heirlooms. So like when a disaster happens, right? Somebody's house burns down or we have a national disaster, whatever it is, those things are gone unless we've made some sort of preservation efforts beforehand. And if you're American and you're here, most of us don't do that. We don't preserve. I can read this thing. Hopefully, if you're all in this program, you can also read too. But I'll read it anyways in case it's small. I believe that I grieve in more ways than the average person does. I grieve the loss of lives, loss of homes, loss of sense of community, loss of neighborhood culture, loss of family photos, loss of heirlooms, loss of family recipes, loss, right? Loss of family obituaries, and the loss of historic places. And I wanted to do something about it. So enrolling in this program helped me to do that. So here's the problem. Now this is kind of fine print, so I'm definitely going to read this. A large percentage of Americans have not performed preparedness actions to increase their personal safety in the event of a disaster or emergency. That comes from FEMA. African American households are significantly less likely to be prepared for disaster than white Americans. That comes from the NAACP. Studies have shown that blacks suffering cardiac arrest are unlikely to receive needed CPR from bystanders or family members. That comes from the American Heart Association. And every day, historically black communities are being destroyed through urban renewal, gentrification, or neglect because these neighborhoods are not valued for what they have represented. And that comes from Patsy Fletcher, and she had an article, Historic Preservation and the African American Community. I've kind of abbreviated her. So that's a big problem. So what are we going to do about it? So once admitted in the program, I had some questions. Okay, we're talking about people, we're talking about places, we're talking about things, historic preservation, digital preservation, all these sort of preservations, life preservation, self-preservation. Isn't there some way that we can tie this all together or look at it and figure out exactly what it is? So I wanted to know, how might I define holistic preservation? And how might I get my communities? When you talk about self-preservation, I'm black and I live in Syracuse, and there's what I call Black Syracuse. There is an initiative in Syracuse called the Black Syracuse Project. And it's not just about people that currently live in Syracuse that are black and the things that they do, but anyone, they could be living anywhere else. If they had some sort of affiliation with Syracuse, they would fall under Black Syracuse because we want to know their stories. We want to know how they got somewhere and did this, or that their mother owned a store. We want to know about Black Syracuse. And preservation, not enough of us are doing it, but we should be. So I wanted to know, look at all those bullet points. How can the Black Syracuse community become empowered to be agents of change in historic preservation, community history, cultural heritage preservation, digital preservation, and life preservation? So that was a big question for me. So when I tried to define holistic preservation, with the search, I searched everywhere. I could only come up with one term about holistic preservation before I actually did this research. And it was really talking about historic properties. So on the way here, I was telling my car mate, Linda, back there, that I saw the best example of the original term, holistic preservation. When we turned on State Street, there's this beautiful building. I have no idea how old it is, but crammed on this side and that side, it's a triangular sort of building with curved edge, but it's got the skyscraper stuck to this side and the skyscraper stuck to that side, so it's just wedged in there. The original holistic preservation talked about historic preservation, preserving the space that's around these historic buildings so that you get the full essence of what it should be like or what it was like. State Street on the corner of whatever we came off in State, they violated that whole process. If you'd like to know, it's in my phone, I can show it to you later, but yeah, that was not the holistic preservation. But the holistic preservation we're talking about is an approach to examine the individual elements, right, of preservation. So the examples are historic preservation, digital preservation, life preservation, cultural heritage preservation, self-preservation. You're gonna need that while you're doing your grad studies, okay? But I wanted to look at those through a holistic lens. I wanted to explore the connections and develop a way that we can address some of the community preservation issues and our needs and promote community engagement. So my studies were based solely on like, how can I save me, my people, the community? And I used Black Syracuse as a place where I live, I love, and I learn. And once you learn how to do things for yourself, you can help others. Just like on the plane, the oxygen comes down, they tell you put it on yourself first, right? So you gotta learn how to save yourself first before you can save others. So if we develop this concept of holistic preservation, starting with Little Black Syracuse, it can be used other ways. That's my thinking. So, a special mentor helped me do a custom design course for me, Miss Dr. Rogers, the holistic preservation theories and methods. Now, those bullets look funny over there. The great thing about that class, and for you all, side note, this program can take you anywhere you want to go, get your foot in many doors and find out, because while you're a student researching these things, go ask that special person that's doing the thing that you think is the greatest. Approach them. So during this, it allowed me to conduct the theoretical research of the current scholarship, right? And then engage with, oh, that's a little bit messed up there, but the preservation specialists, those people who are in there doing the trenches, doing the current scholarship. And it also, the part it doesn't show you is it allowed me to go to local and national conferences to learn more about these different elements of preservation. I went to the National Trust for Historic Preservation's National Preservation Conference in Indianapolis, right? I got to be a diversity scholar. They paid for the hotel and the stuff, and it was a great experience to be with preservationists from all over, right? I went to the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society's National Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. All was part of my course. These are things that I kind of finagled in and went to, right? Some of it student discount, some whatever, make it happen. New York Council for Humanities, I went to their facilitation retreat so that I could learn how to facilitate community conversations and do all that stuff. That was a free trip to Rochester and then to New York City to facilitate a program called Muslim Voices. And American Heart Association, we all know about that, right? Basic life support for the healthcare provider. We became instructors so that we can learn how to teach people to save lives. Hands-only CPR, certifications for CPR, because one of the earlier points told you that most of us, if we drop from a sudden cardiac arrest, nobody's gonna help us. And the studies showed that especially if you are Black and are in a lower income neighborhood or Hispanic, or there's certain, your chances, nil. You think they're low already. So the important part is for us to learn how to preserve lives and get our community to do that more. So all these were important to me. So let's see. back to this. So the theme of my MALS degree was towards engaging Black Syracuse in holistic preservation, people, places, and things. So I got to look at all those different things, and I used a creative project which was called the Sankofa Soul District Holistic Preservation Day. Now that was the coolest thing because it actually allowed me to try my theory about finding a way to get to the people. How can we learn all these different things? So the coolest thing I think was our common counselor. We had a proclamation declared, and they signed, sealed it, you know, the whole thing. We had a preservation day. And on that day, we had different sorts of preservation. I think I go into it further. Different sorts of preservation is all in the same place, kind of like a trade show. You know how they have the tables and the booths and you can go up to what you're interested in? Well, we had that, but we had it at Beach and Branch Library where they have a stage. Libraries are cool, right? We had a stage and each person got like 5 minutes, maybe 10, to tell what it is they do and why you should become involved in preservation and blah, blah, blah. And then afterwards, you had the opportunity to go to each table, whatever struck your interest, to learn more about preservation. We had, let's see, here's a little, before I go to that. When it says Reflections of a Mad Black Preservationist, the analytical essay they talk about, it was my reflection on the whole process of the steps that I took and whatever. And the reason I call it the Mad Black Preservationist, because some of you may have heard of Tyler Perry has a Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Well, when I thought about all the things that were happening to my community, these things made me mad. I thought about Hurricane Katrina, and I could see the pictures of the people stranded on roofs, people having no food, all those different things. I had a house that I inherited from my grandparents. Somebody burned it up, so all the little stuff. My old neighborhood, they knocked it down. In fact, they even had a big contest where they blew up the warehouse that was across the street so they could make room for a highway. So these things, if you're not taking pictures or capturing your history, your community, your life, whatever those things, if you haven't scanned those photo albums or whatever, that stuff could be gone in a blink of an eye. Whether it's a fire, whether it's a hurricane. So we have to think about preservation. We have to think about it holistically, not just I'm going over to that museum, that old place. No, preservation, just like your photos in your smartphone. What happens to those? If you lose your phone, if you pass away and no one has that password, or who are these people in those photos? If you don't label them, what good is it? So we have to, each one of us have to think about preservation. So we have to write this for our final project. We have to write this proposal, and it goes through stringent review, but you can do it. So my proposal, I proposed that I wanted to do this event, and you had to write about the designing, the implementation, and the collaborations. You have to contact people. If you're going to have something like that, you can't be afraid to talk to people. You have to approach them and say, look, this is what I'm trying to do. They might not get it, but many times they'll be supportive. The Preservation Association of Central New York, their president was one of the people on my Holistic Preservation Day. And he said over the mic, you know, when she was talking about holistic preservation, I didn't get it, but I see this now, and I get it. We had people there training in CPR, we had fire department there, we had the Historical Association, we had disaster preparedness people, we had so many things. Oh, see, you can't read it, but that's the little proclamation that they gave us from the city of Syracuse. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Syracuse Common Council, as duly elected representatives of the proud citizens of the city of Syracuse, do hereby recognize April 29, 2014 to be Sankofa Soul District Holistic Preservation Day, to be served at Beecham Branch Library from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's some history. I haven't done it again since. I've done minor things since then, but we had a day. A new day had arrived. These are just some images from that day. That's the Common Counselor. You can barely see him over there. He's the one who signed it. We had community members like the little children. The guy in the center with the bookmark is from the Education Department of Onondaga Historical. The other guy is a photographer. The one in the corner below, he's the one who said, "I don't get it, but it works." You know? And the lady in the middle center, she was from United Way about disaster preparedness, and she was giving out these little disaster preparedness kits. So people who came to the event walked away with something to start them thinking about preservation and something that'll help them a little while. Let's see, is there anything else? Let's see, oh, here's your takeaway. The power to preserve is in your hands. So this is a banner that we designed for that event, and that striking young man in that hands, that's my father when he was younger. And so I have preserved the memory of my father, but I'm also imploring on you all to preserve your photos, your stories, your community, your treasures, your history. Preserve your life. What will you do with the power? Thank you.